Hi there, my name's Autumn Tamura, and I will be talking about identity today. Knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. Aristotle. What is identity? My favorite identity definition came from Psychology Today. Identity encompasses the memories, experiences, relationships, and values that create one's sense of self. This amalgamation creates a steady sense of who one is over time, even as new facets are developed and incorporated into one's identity. At some point in our lives, we may all ask ourselves, who am I? That answer is formed by what is reflected back on us by other people. Who we are and how we arrive at that conclusion permeates every facet of our lives. Taking a look at what it means to be oneself is taking a dive into the mirror to uncover the depths of our deepest desires, values, and beliefs. According to our textbook, Communication in the Real World, 2016, section 8.1, our parents, family, teachers, and even the media help shape who we are and how we see ourselves. Sometimes in our adolescence, we usually start reflecting on who we were and who we'll be in the future. Our self-concept can be broken down into three categories: our personal identity, our social identity, and our cultural identity. Identity is ever evolving as we experience new things throughout our lives. Our personal identities include the parts of ourselves that are mostly intrapersonal and have developed from our lived experiences. You may identify with many different things, like an athlete, a dancer, a doctor, a firefighter, musician, scholar, or a writer. These are things that we are part of individually. Our social identities are part of ourselves that are created in social groups that we're committed to. Our family is a social group that helps shape our identity. You might be an avid Oregon Ducks football fan or watch the Kansas City Chiefs religiously. You can also have many ways of identifying socially. You may identify as a member of a sorority or fraternity, an Orchid Society member, a professional soccer player, a member of your local employers union, or as a university student. Our cultural identities are constructed categories that teach us a way of being and include expectations on how we should behave or act. These are larger, overarching groups that we belong to. These are groups we're often born into and therefore the least changeable and most constant. Historical roots are often what separates cultural from social identities. You may identify as an African American, female or male, heterosexual, lesbian, gay, or bisexual. You may identify as Scottish or part of the deaf culture. We might interpret what it means to be a member of these cultural groups by what others tell us, consciously or unconsciously. Identities in all of these three categories can be ascribed or avowed. Ascribed identities are personal, social, or cultural identities that are placed on us by others. Avowed identities, on the other hand, are those that we claim for ourselves. Sometimes stereotypes are behind identities that are ascribed to others. We may look at people who wear glasses and carry books around everywhere and join book clubs as nerds. That may be how we stereotype them based on looks, but they may love the idea of being a nerd and fully embrace the word, avowing it as part of their own identity. Even though some identities are permanent, the level of our awareness of them, known as salience, changes based on context. As we're exposed to new people and experiences, how we identify in various groups changes. Cultural and social influences have established dominant and non-dominant groups throughout history. Dominant identities historically had, and currently have, more resources, influence, and privileges. Non-dominant identities have had and currently have less resources, influence, and unearned privileges. Differences at this cultural level are institutionalized, and exceptions to this rule doesn't change this fact. Being a member of a dominant group means you're granted privileges that members of the non-dominant groups don't have. Power and resources leave some people advantaged and others not. There are varying stages of dominant and non-dominant identity development. Dominant identity development has 5 distinct stages: unexamined identity, acceptance, resistance, redefinition, integration. In the unexamined stage, a member of the dominant group isn't thinking about their or others' identities. They're aware of differences between groups, but they don't think or aren't aware that hierarchy applies to them. The acceptance stage is where members of the dominant identity group passively or actively accepts that some people are treated differently, but they don't address it. They don't see their privilege. In the resistance stage, an individual acknowledges the unearned advantages that they've been gifted, and they feel guilt or even shame about it. They may want to distance themselves from their dominant group. Not everyone may be willing to accept people at this stage as an ally when self-actualization begins to occur. The redefinition stage is when people revise the negative views of their identity, help in the resistance stage, and begin to acknowledge their privilege, and try to use that power for social justice. At the integration level, after redefinition is complete, people begin to integrate their dominant identity into all aspects of their life. They begin to educate others about their privilege and become true allies, using their unearned advantages to speak up for others. Being an ally means finding ways to use your privilege anywhere you see others being discriminated against. Non-dominant identity development stages are slightly similar with some key differences. At the unexamined stage, members of the non-dominant groups are unaware of their identity or don't have any interest in exploring it. The conformity stage is where a person internalizes and adopts the values and norms of the dominant group. This is often done to fit in and avoid being left out. This has many names, but might sometimes be called masking or passing. Someone may act straight or adopt a more American-sounding name, for example, to fit in more easily. The next stage is resistance and separation. At this point, members of the non-dominant group may realize that despite their efforts, they're still different and not included. They may challenge members of the dominant group. They separate themselves and only interact with other members of the non-dominant group. At the integration level, people who identify as members of the non-dominant group have achieved a balance in embracing their own identities and valuing other people's. They may direct any lingering anger or frustration toward positive outlets to help end discrimination. Difference matters. When we meet someone new, we immediately notice the ways that they're similar to us, as well as the ways they're different. Both of these things are important, but the differences may be what we're most aware of and that cause the most trouble communicating. We naturally place people into in-groups and out-groups based on these perceptions. Our stereotypes and prejudices against members of that out-group will affect how we interact with the new individual. There is an ideology of domination that makes it seem natural and normal to many that some people or groups will always have power over others. This dominance and hierarchy was not likely among early humans, but understanding how these differences came about can help us create a more fair society. Diversity and visibility is increasing for members of historically marginalized groups. As demographics shift, how we interact with one another will also evolve. How we perceive and interact with others is affected by our values and beliefs. Getting to know our core values is key to knowing oneself. Asking ourselves what really matters most to us is a fundamental step in fully understanding how our identities create who we are. Do I show the world who I really am? What might be preventing me from living fully embodied as my true, authentic self? What are my values and beliefs? And am I living in alignment with my values and beliefs? We've all been around someone pretending to be someone they're not. Authenticity instills trust. We know that we can trust someone's word because they say and do things based on what they really think and feel. But it's not always easy to present our true selves to the world around us. According to the writers at Berkeley Executive Education, Not Dated, in the article, The Importance of Authenticity, they say, we are wired for survival to want to belong. And for so long, there has been a real price to pay by veering too far from our organization or peer group's expectations and norms. When we fear we have more to lose by being ourselves than we have to gain, we might adapt who we are to safeguard our status, reputation, paycheck, or whatever else might be at stake. So it becomes easier and seemingly safer to suppress one's true thoughts, feelings, or personality than to express them. From an article by Maggie Wool titled How Are Personal Values Formed? Discover the Joy of a Life Aligned, 2022, Better Up. She says, looking at our personal, social, and cultural identities and exploring our core beliefs and values can help us find areas in our lives to make changes and discover opportunities for growth. By analyzing what it is that we believe to be true, and if those beliefs are our own or simply what we've been taught, we can begin taking steps to live our most authentic lives. We can set goals and work toward living a life full of purpose, meaning, and deep satisfaction when we're living in alignment with our true nature. Knowing what you're working for and working toward makes it easier to make decisions and get through the challenges in life. I encourage you to find your favorite photograph of yourself and take some time to learn about the person looking back at you. Ask yourself, who am I? I included a little poem I wrote titled Stardust. We are exactly who we are because of all the people who have crossed our paths, those we've loved, those we've lost, the happenstance, the brief encounters, the long, slow dance, the fragments of stardust gathered from the shirt tails of each person we've been graced to know, one by one, a lesson or a blessing, lending depth and definition to our lives, intentional or not, sculpting our minds, our hearts in multitudes unknown. Thanks, everyone.